Project Search.
Hi, it's Danny again. Today, I'll be talking to you about something very important, and that would be the Americans with Disabilities Act.
And now I sign legislation which takes a sledgehammer to another wall. One which has for too many generations separated Americans with disabilities from the freedom they could glimpse but not grasp. And once again we rejoice as this barrier falls, proclaiming together, we will not accept, we will not excuse, we will not tolerate discrimination in America. And on your behalf, as well as the behalf of this entire country, I now lift my pen to sign this Americans with Disability Act and say, let the shameful wall of exclusion finally come tumbling down.
That was President George H.W. Bush giving a speech before signing the ADA into law back in July of 1990, almost 30 years ago exactly. Please note, in addition to this presentation you're watching now, I'm going to be sending a link to a longer presentation about the history of the ADA and how it came to be. Project Search UTMC Remote Learning, the Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA. What is the ADA? The Americans with Disabilities Act passed in 1990. We are now at 30 years since the passage of the ADA. It's a federal civil rights legislation that says it is illegal to discriminate against people with disabilities in employment, state and local government services, private businesses, telecommunications, and transportation. But the goal is the full inclusion of people with disabilities in all aspects of American society. Why, though, was the ADA needed? So, thinking back to before 1990, the world was quite different in some key ways. There were very few curb cuts and sidewalks so that people who use wheelchairs and other mobility devices could easily cross from one side of the street to the other, and safely as well, of course. Many businesses were not accessible. People with disabilities were rarely seen in advertisements and TV shows. Interpreters for the hearing impaired were rarely used at public events. People with disabilities were excluded from many activities due to barriers. That was what the world was like before the ADA. And in the 30 years since then, a lot of progress has been made in terms of making the community accessible to people who have various disabilities. There are 5 titles or sections of the ADA. There's employment, which prohibits discrimination in all employment processes. The state and local government, Title II, is physical and program accessibility in state and local government entities. Title III, public accommodations, physical and program accessibility in restaurants, hotels, stores, places of business. Title IV was to telecommunications, telephone and communication systems for the public. And then there was Title V, which was for miscellaneous. Now, of course, this is Project Search. So we're going to focus on Title I, which is about employment. And what it says is that an employer of 15 or more employees may not discriminate against an employee on the basis of disability in any aspect of the employment relationship. Title I ensures that qualified individuals with disabilities have comparable access to the employment process, are afforded an interactive process to determine reasonable accommodation, and are provided access to all benefits of employment, including access to related services such as a gym that they may be able to have membership in, and transportation that may be provided to the rest of the workforce. We're going to turn our attention now to accommodations. A reasonable accommodation is a modification to the job application process, to the work environment or the manner under which the position held is customarily performed, or a modification that enables an employee with a disability to enjoy equal benefits and privileges of employment. We'll be spending a lot of time next week talking about accommodations. We're also going to talk about disclosure. So that'll be a big subject we'll talk about next week. Disclosure simply means notifying an employer that you need to request a reasonable accommodation due to a physical or mental limitation that is a result of a disability. Disclosure and accommodation are linked in this way. The employer, once you've disclosed your disability, is then required to provide you a reasonable accommodation. And so we'll go into detail about what is a reasonable accommodation and the process of how to disclose a disability to an employer next week. The goal of the ADA was to create a more inclusive society where people who have disabilities would not feel excluded and that they would be more able to contribute to society and to enjoy the benefits of being a contributing member of society. Please watch the video in the link in your email to go along with this presentation before we get together tomorrow. I'm really looking forward to talking to everybody about this topic. Talk to you soon.